Today we're talking about the Sony A7IV, and this video is specifically designed for you to figure out whether or not it's going to be a good pickup for you. And yes, I don't care about people's feelings. This is a dramatic and very, very big upgrade over the A7 III. So we're going to talk about some of the facts today, not the feelings about these cameras, the facts to show you and hopefully help you decide whether or not this is going to be something that you buy to upgrade from an A7 III or again, pass altogether. So let's jump in, and if you want to know about the technical aspects of this camera, that's all you're concerned about, just go watch Gerald's video. There's just a total nerdiness about every aspect of anything technical that you'd want to know, absolutely. But if you want to know more about maybe a different perspective, more of the creative side, the real world side, maybe there's some things in this video that could help you to determine whether or not this camera is a particular good fit for you, and just maybe bring up some things that you might not have considered. So let's first discuss about some of the newer things about this camera. First is its sensor. It's 33 megapixel sensor, which is a pretty dramatic upgrade over the old 24 megapixel sensor. And this is a great upgrade for you photographers, for somebody wanting a bit more cropping power. Well, now you've got it. It's a great middle of the range, and our computers and whatnot are getting better and better, so we shouldn't have a big deal keeping up in terms of editing, but do note that your file sizes are going to be a little bit bigger, and thus you're going to need more places to store them. So do keep that in mind. It also has an incredible 15 stops of dynamic range, and in terms of noise control, even outperformed the A7S III by a third of a stop. That is pretty darn impressive. So the sensor, the processor, everything's working really well to give us not a lot of sacrifice, but still keep those extra megapixels looking pretty good in terms of photography. With that sensor also comes a new processor that's very quick. It's the Bionize or the Bionize or whatever it's called, XR. This is a great new processor. The same one found in the Sony A7 III. This is going to be very helpful in improving the autofocus system, which is going to be one of the main factors here in me and probably a lot of people choosing this camera. This is basically like a little baby A9 with a much improved autofocus system over the Sony A7 III. And if you ask me for what it looks like, this is probably worth the upgrade right there if you are concerned with autofocus being a priority. This is a huge advantage, not just in stills, but also in video. Its eye autofocus capabilities for humans, for animals, and now birds in both stills and video is just next level. It's been improved over 30% in terms of accuracy over previous generations, and it's very, very, very fast and quick and reliable. So there's one thing that's a downside that when I saw it, I was like, whoa, I don't know about that. And that's the shooting speed, the 10 frames per second. That really got me to take a step back here and go, what is going on here? Why? Why can't we have 15 or 20 even? Well, you can't have 20 because that's A9 territory. 15 I don't think would have been too bad, but 10, the exact same as the A7 III, well, here's what I kind of came to terms with. If the autofocus system is that much better and more reliable, then I'm gonna have a lot more hit rate. And that means I have to shoot less photos and get more usable photos, then I'm okay with that. The average person, the average photographer doesn't really need more than 10 frames per second. And if you are a professional, if you're shooting birds or you're shooting crazy sports and getting paid for it, well then you're probably gonna invest in an A9 or an A1 or something. So this is a great middle of the road, 10 frames per second. And if it's that much better in terms of autofocus, if the A7 III is hitting 50% and the A7 IV is hitting 90%, then yeah, it's an upgrade, absolutely. So I've got away with 10 frames per second for years now in my Sony A7 III. I've won tons of awards and whatnot, and the action for the most part has been captured when I need it. So a little bit of a bump up or an improvement would have been better for me, but it is what it is. There's always give and take. And I think given the amazing new autofocus system, well, it is what it is. So I think I'm gonna live with it. And I think that's not gonna be a deal breaker for me personally. Now, in terms of shooting speed as well, the 10 frames per second is with compressed RAW only. And if you're shooting uncompressed, it looks like it's only gonna be about 5 to 6 frames per second, which is quite low. But the good news is that there's really not much reason for you to be shooting in uncompressed RAW because there's basically, the difference is negligible. Honestly, the biggest difference is going to be the file size, which is dramatically different. Double the size if you're shooting in uncompressed RAW. So for me, shooting in compressed RAW like I always do, is it a deal breaker? Absolutely not. Now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about some of the video capabilities, because this is a hybrid camera and photography is just as important as video is in this camera. Now, is it gonna have the same features as the A7S III or the A1? Obviously not. Don't expect that. Did we get 4K 60? We absolutely did. Did we get 10-bit? Absolutely, which is a massive upgrade over 8-bit. To put that into perspective, 8-bit is around 16 million colors and 10-bit is a billion colors. So it's a massive dramatic difference in terms of what you're able to do in post with your footage. So in terms of the 4K 60, you do have it, but there's a crop, a 1.5 times crop. Now, do I care as a hybrid shooter? And I do shoot a lot of video, B-roll and stuff for the channel and this and that. Do I care? Absolutely not. I could care less, to be honest with you. Who cares? It's B-roll. You're not gonna be filming 100% of your stuff, long-term interviews and stuff in 4K 60 anyways. What does it matter? Get a bit of a wider lens or take a few steps back. I don't see the huge issue here. And again, if you need professional video capabilities, buy a professional video camera. This is going to be a hybrid camera and you can't have it all. There's give and there's take. So again, that 4K 60, fantastic, much welcomed. And is it a deal breaker for me? Absolutely not. So the 10-bit, awesome. We've got S-Cinetone, we've got creative styles built in. It looks like this footage is gonna look phenomenal and some of the best out there. It's downsampled from 7K, so it's gonna give you some really crisp and beautiful looking footage. And yeah, even if it's got a crop. Now, one aspect that's criticized of the A7 III and now the 4 is gonna be the rolling shutter. And again, is it gonna be a deal breaker for me? Absolutely not. This is not a crazy film dedicated camera that you're gonna be whipping around and whatnot. Honestly, you're probably gonna be shooting in slow-mo with really controlled, really nice, smooth movements, or it's gonna be on a tripod just like this. And if those are the situations you're gonna be mostly in, it's gonna give you beautiful, beautiful footage. Am I overly concerned with the rolling shutter? Well, not at all. In fact, not even a little bit. The A7 III didn't have the greatest rolling shutter. It's about comparable here in the A7 IV, maybe a tiny bit better from what I can see, but honestly, it's got more megapixels. What do you want from the thing? I'm pretty impressed, and again, not a deal breaker for me. Come to think of it, what else utilizes a crop? Well, image stabilization. It does have 5.5 stops of image stabilization built in the IBIS, but it also has active stabilization that you'll find in the Sony A7S III as well, which is amazing. But when you use that active stabilization, that software, you're gonna get a crop. Who cares? It looks better. Again, this is a hybrid camera and you have to keep your expectations in line. People create absolutely mind-blowing stuff with the A7 III, so given the 10-bit, the 4K 60, even with a crop, there's really no reason why you can't create absolutely amazing things with this camera. Hands down, end of story, period. Next up for you video shooters, we've got a fully articulating screen, and this is gonna be great for everybody. It's convenient, and yeah, we don't need it for photography, but in some aspects, it's really nice to have. For you video shooters, it's definitely a necessity, so again, a really welcome feature. It's also got some crazy stuff like focus breathing compensation for some of the G Master lenses, which is really cool to see, which also, yes, utilizes a crop once again, but a really cool thing to see. And they've also added several more video tailored things that you don't even find in the flagship at this point. So again, they're really thinking and pushing this thing as far as I can tell, and it's working for me. But let me know your thoughts, guys, and if you're enjoying this video so far in my perspective, consider hitting that like and subscribe button and join the community. Next up, you're actually going to be able to use manual focus override right in your lenses through the software and whatnot, and that's a really cool thing. I know that some lenses are capable of that right out of the gate, but to have and be able to utilize that with, you know, all or most lenses is a really cool feature for me. Now, it does utilize a new CF Express Type A, and this is going to keep your buffer going pretty much indefinitely if you're shooting in JPEG, and over 800 photos if you're shooting in RAW. Now, that is a lot of photos, so that's pretty much indefinite, and there's no way you'd ever need to shoot 800 photos at once. In fact, the thing's only rated for 600 and something photos on a battery, so yes, that buffer is more than capable, and it does of course have 2 card slots, of course, for redundancy, with only one of them accepting a CF Express Type A and or a typical standard UHS 2, or you can have 2 of those as well. So there's that for your professional work. You're covered once again. Next up, it's got a full-size HDMI, and they've made it easier than ever to stream, now up to 4K 15 frames per second, which is a bit weird, but now it's like plug and play basically. You plug it in, it's gonna prompt you, do you want a file transfer, do you want to use it as a webcam? You're hitting it and you're off to the races, which is really cool in terms of communication and file transfer. They've also upgraded that. They've really just upgraded everything. And again, it's not going to be perfect for everybody, but if you're a hybrid shooter like me, the give and take in this case so far is looking pretty good. Now, one big thing for me is the upgraded EVF and LCD. It's not, of course, as crazy as the A1 or the A7S3 to keep costs down, but it is much improved, and that is much, much welcomed. Above and beyond that, we have a new body, a bigger body, more ergonomic, better weather sealed, and that's always a good thing. We've got some more custom dials and whatnot for ease of use, and it looks just like an overall better presentation of a camera. Now, it does have the amazing Z-type battery, of course, with great battery life, but not quite as good as the A7 III, and that's because of the added tech, the better LCD, and the better EVF, and that's to be expected. We can see it improved a little bit maybe with future firmware updates, but it's probably about 100 shots less than the A7 III, which is, in my experience, absolutely amazing. Is it a deal breaker? Definitely not. One awesome thing that I love to see is that the shutter now comes down when you're changing your lenses. This is going to be a big factor in how much you're going to clean your sensor, which was a big pet peeve of mine on the A7 III. Fantastic to see, and I'm so happy that Sony is listening. So we can pre-order this camera now, of course, and when are we going to get it? It looks like mid to late December, and remember, everything that you see now is a pre-production model, so expect things to change a little bit here and there, and for them to fix some bugs and whatnot if you do see any out there. But in terms of the price of this camera, it's coming in right at about $2,500 US, or about $31.99 Canadian. So $500 more than the A7 III. Is it worth it? Absolutely. Now, you might see the A7 III drop to the sale price typically of $1,800, or maybe even less in some cases. Is it worth it? For me, absolutely. I think it's a fantastic pickup. $500 or even $700 with today. You can't really walk outside without being hit with inflation left, right, and center. Everything is rising exponentially, so $700 for a camera that's much newer with the newest tech that's got a lot of things that they've taken into consideration fixed, I think is absolutely fair. I think they could have charged a little bit more. I think it would have hurt them in sales a little bit, but I don't think that $2,500 US is that crazy. So let me know down in the comments if you think I'm wrong and if you're gonna be picking this camera up. And what about me? Did I pre-order this thing, or am I gonna pass or just stick with my old A7 III? Well, I definitely pre-ordered this camera. I'm so excited to check this thing out in its entirety in the real world, get creative with it, and see what I can do with many of the awesome upgrades. There's really not much that I can nitpick at this point for the price. If I need something specific to photography, I'm gonna buy a photography specific camera. And the same thing goes with video stuff. If I want a dedicated video camera that has amazing high frame rates and craziness like that, then I'll buy that. But you can't expect to have everything. That's not how the world works. Anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching. I hope you liked this video and you enjoyed it and it helped you out maybe. If it did, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. If you wanna buy or pre-order this camera, I will drop affiliate links down in the description for you. Like always, make mistakes, be yourself, and get out there and take some more pictures. See you in the next one.